Woo! ReactNext. How you all doing? How was it till now? That's it, you're tired at the end of the day. Let's hear you guys, let's hear you. Okay, so I'm here today to speak about after some around the last 10 years of developing high-scale apps, and in the last 5 years using React in production, I have come to a way to develop React apps very fast because we have little bit problems with that. And this methodology, I will present today some of ideas that help us to make it possible. It's not a myth. You actually can produce a production app very fast. So let me show you about this. A little bit about myself. My name is Alon Valadji. I don't know how we got it. I was in a heavy metal band. But I'm a senior tech lead at Twig. Twig is a company, a startup company that just got a seed right now. And we are developing a personalization of apps at real time. So we can change the website according to the user. We can short forms, we can replace images, products, and everything so the user will engage more KPIs and more conversion. You can also catch me in GitHub and in Twitter. So the first concept I would like to speak about is design-driven development. So what is really design-driven development? And I don't know how many of you guys know, but today the communication between the product, the designer, and the app, it goes something like this. The product comes with a spec, it's bring it into the designer, and the designer then give it back to the developer. The developer start to implement the design, and then the communication become very obscure. Only with the product, the designer left outside. We don't know what happened. And you start to miscommunicating stuff. And in the end, when you are trying to see the designer come to see the app, it sees something like this in production. How many of you know this? It's a disaster. So in design-driven development, we're trying to change this a little bit. So what if we put the design in the main, and let's describe our spec in a visual way? If we describing the spec in a visual way, the communication becomes like this. So if the spec changes, we have to redesign, and the developer has to re-implement it. In this kind of communication, it sounds that we all will be happy, yes? But not quite yet. We need another tool set to implement it. So how many of you guys are using style guides or design system? It works? Yes? Some of you? Some of you don't use at all, very free flow. Okay. So what about design system and style guides? They are great, but it takes a long time to build them. We need to basically develop all the style guide with all the components and all the styles from the designer and from the product and what you want to use before we ship it to the developers so they can consume the style guide in their project. And what about if something changed? This is also create a lot of chaos. So we want to create a design system much faster. So Brad Fost come up with an atomic design concept. And what is atomic design? I will try to explain it. So it's built out of atom. Basically it's like a chemistry component. So it's built out of atoms, and combining multiple atoms create molecules. Combining multiple molecules and atoms create organism, and then we have templates, and another concept, the last concept we have is the actual pages of the app. So let's try to break it down right now. Atoms. So what are atoms? Atoms are the smallest particles in our application. And as the smallest particles, basically they are building blocks of the application. So we can think about HTML tags like input or button. They can be atoms, even style, even CSS style classes. Everything can be an atom that is basically our building block. And later on, we have the molecules. And the molecules are a combination of some atoms. So if we take the latter example of the input and the button, we can combine a search box. A search box is a molecule with the input and the button. The next concept is organism. And organisms are basically multiple atoms and multiple molecules combined together. So a good example of an organism, it's a navigation bar. It's a part of our page that it's combining of multiple organisms, multiple molecules. The next concept are templates. Templates are basically allowing us to put different organisms in the page and put some placeholder for our next actual content. So a template will look like something like this. We can play with how we want to form our real page. And the last concept, the most important concept, is the page itself. And the page itself will show multiple organisms in the page and the actual content. I hope you got it. If you have questions, don't hesitate to stop me. But we need to implement it. And to implement it, the developer needs to implement it so we can also start the communication with the other stakeholders in the companies. And I found out that Storybook is the best tool to do it. Storybook lets you implement your code and visual display it so you can start moving it around and show it to everyone in the company. So it's very easy to start your Storybook project. In your project, you just need to run this line of code. And Storybook will pick up the framework you are using and will generate a template for you. So let's pick a little bit at the code. So after we running the Storybook command, it will create you two folders, the Storybook folder and the stories folder. Also, Storybook will add in your package.json some NPM tasks to run the Storybook in development time and to build a Storybook. So if you want to ship it in-house, in the internal network of the company, or if you want to ship it even online, so any stakeholder can catch up with what it's progressing. Another thing I like to change in the Storybook configuration is to pick up the stories from the SRC folder of mine and to pick stories from the suffix of story.js6. So let's look about how we got our spec now from the product and the designer. You remember we are visually representing our spec. So we need a design to reflect every state of our application. So we have this login form, and we see we have a logo, we have a field here, and the login button, some social buttons, and a number here. And also we have the states of this form with data, and you see with data the label goes up, and even the password and its error state. So now we have our spec in a visual way. It's very, very easy now to try to break it down and start to implement it. So the first we need to do is to break it down to the atomic design concept. So first what we will do, you have a suggestion? What is our building blocks? Atoms, yes. So what I'm doing in the structure, in the folder structure of the folder, of the project, is creating a folder for each atomic design concept. So we have atoms, molecules, organism, and pages. I'm skipping the templates in this presentation because we know already what is the actual page with the actual content. We don't need a template here. So let's look how I break it all down to atoms. So I took the button, I took the field, I took the label, I took the logo, I took the icon. And it's pretty straightforward React component to represent the button, represent the icon, which is different states of Facebook or Google, represent the input box, the label, the logo, etc. And the next thing you want to do is create a story to reflect that visually. So to create a story, we create a file with the story.js6 suffix. It doesn't matter how the file is called. And we import the story of API of React. And we can also import the action API from the add-on action. I will show you what it will do. And I'm importing the atoms that I created. And now using the story of API and the namespace space atom, I will start to add stories. And as you can see, I have a story of the input. I have the story with the input with data. And I have the story for each icon and how it looks. So let's take a look how it's looking in Storybook. You only need to run the yarn Storybook command. And it will launch it will compile the project and will launch the Storybook in port 6006 in the browser. So we can see here, everyone see? You need bigger? I hope you can see it, but we have here the atoms that we break down. We have the input with data, the label, the form, the button, and the Facebook icons. Also, we can see that if we have an action somewhere, it will represent in the action panel. So the next step we want to do is to create the molecules. And if we look at the design, can we guess what a molecule we have here? We have a field in the form. And a field is combined with an input and a label, yes? And even the state of the field is the error state, let's say. So we create our field molecule. We bring our label and input atoms and create a field component that accepts some props to reflect the state. And it's pretty straightforward. Let's look it in the Storybook. In the Storybook, I will bring the molecule of the field, and I will start create stories with each state. The email with value, the password with value, and even the password with error. So if we look it in the Storybook, you will see the email with value, and you see the label goes up, the password with value, the label goes up, and with the error state. We are not doing anything yet. We're not introducing any state to the application. We're just simply reflect the spec in a visual way. The next thing we want to do is create an organism. And our organism, it's the form, this form. We have fields inside, and we have a login button. And also we have some kind of state. So to create the form, I'm using a Mobix React form. I'm using Mobix for state in my application. I love Mobix. And Mobix React form lets you create a meta forms with simply describing the fields as you like them to be, and even the validation out of the box. You don't need to do anything, and you have almost any validation you can think of. So this is the store of the form. We export this, and we create the login form. We bring the atom form, the field molecule, and the button atom, and we create the login that accepts the form and on-submit handler. The form itself is iterated on the fields in our meta form, and it's rendered the field with our state. Let's create a story for that. And in a story, we are just importing the login and the store. The login form, not the login. And we create a submit handler over here, and we have a namespace organism with the login form that we pass the form data and the on-submit handler. Let's see it on Storybook. So this is the login form. And as you can see, as I'm starting typing, I will get also validation out of the box. And when the validation is okay, I will get everything that's expected. Pressing the login, I will get the submit handler result. And if the form is in error state, it's not an error, I will get the error state also. So the last thing I want to show you is after we break everything into atoms, molecule, and organism, we can go ahead and create our page. So let's try to make it together. I I will try to crunch a little bit and write the code. Okay, so first of all, we need to import React. We are using JS6 syntax. Next, I'm using Mobix state, so I need to wrap my component with observer. Now I will import my login organism, my login form. I will import the logo for my atoms. Let's see what we need more. So we have the logo, we have the form, we need the social icons, and the social icons are coming from also the atoms we created. Icon. And now let's create our login component. The login will get a store, and we'll turn back a div with a page class name. And inside what we have our logo in the top, at the top. We have our login form. Then we have the icons. Icon with Facebook first, and the second icon with Google. And the last, we have a paragraph with our footer text inside, and it said don't have account, and a sign up. We got that correctly? I think so. Another thing we need to pass to our login, if you see before, it's two props. It's the form prop that come from the store and the onSubmit handler. Otherwise, the form won't work. Where it comes from the store also onSubmit. Okay. Let's export it. It's look all right. Almost. Now it's okay. The login form, and this will be login page, because it's a page. And let's build a story for it so we can see it visual. So we need React because we are using JS6 syntax. And we need the story of API from Storybook, and also the action API from Storybook also. Yes. Now we will import our page organism. Our page is not organism. Import a login page from the page. And let's import also our store. And the store is very simple here. The store also has one field inside called form that we have from our organism, if you remember. And now we can make an instance of the store. So we can pass it to the login page. And we can start to write our story. So story of with the namespace of pages. And we can add the story here with the name of login. And this accepts a function that returns our login page component. And what we need to pass to our login page is only the store. Let's see it in Storybook. So here is the login. Store, new store. Login page. Yes. Thank you, typos. Let's check the login again. Ah, yes, you are right. This we need to import from our molecule, from our organism. Yes. Yes, and now we have it. Okay, we have the complete page. But it still doesn't work because we need an onSubmit handler for the login to work. So let's add an onSubmit handler. And we will call here for the React Mobix form API with the onSubmit method. We pass the event and an object. And it has onSuccess method that receives a form. And we have onError method that receives a form. And what we want to reflect it in the action panel in the Storybook, so we'll add an action when we have success with a success namespace, and we call it with the form values. Also, we will have an action with an error state, action, error, and again, a typo. Okay, and we have the onSubmit handler also. I like to put my handlers outside of the code. I don't think they need to be part of the components. They need to be part of our higher order component that wraps the route, but this is another story. So now when we hit the login button, we need to refresh. We will see the error state with the error message and the success also if we put the success also with the credential we create. So this is let us basically, I think it's embarrassing how little code I need to write to represent a page in my application, yes? What do you think, guys? And this is basically allow me to develop very fast my application in that methodology and also improve my communication between stakeholders in the company. And also it allows me to reflect all my application development process, ongoing development process to everyone that wants to see it, because I can ship it to online, or I can deploy it in the company intranet or something like that. Any questions? No? Everything is clear? Okay. So I have it in my GitHub, and thank you very much.